The first thing Lin Xingyue registered was the smell. Not the crisp, ozone-tinged scent of rain she'd fallen asleep to, but the cloying, astringent perfume of industrial-grade antiseptic. It coated her tongue, thick and wrong. The second thing was the voice. It was chirpy, artificially sweet, and it echoed inside her skull like a bad pop song. Congratulations, host. The iconic scenes system has been successfully bound. Your mission, complete 10 iconic romantic scenes from the novel, The Cold CEO's Substitute Darling, to unlock the return portal to your original world. Fail, and the system will initiate elimination protocols. Let's make some drama. Xingyue's eyes flew open. Instead of her bedroom's cozy, poster-covered ceiling, she was met with the sterile, pitted tiles of a hospital room. A dull, throbbing ache pulsed behind her temples. Memories that weren't hers flooded in a lonely childhood in the countryside, a grandfather's belated guilt, a return to a glittering, hostile family in Jinhu City, the cold sneers of a sister who'd taken her place, and the crushing weight of being invisible, unwanted, a ghost in her own life. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," she groaned, her voice raspy. She'd just pulled 3 all-nighters to finish her graphic design portfolio before graduation. She'd finally landed a job. She'd ordered celebratory spicy hot pot. She'd fallen asleep, full and triumphant. And now this. Transmigration. The cliché of clichés. And not even as the heroine or the villainess, but as Lin Xingyue, the doomed white moonlight older sister, a character so passive and tragically beautiful her only narrative function was to die quietly in chapter 15, thereby making the fake daughter, Lin Xinrui, look more precious in comparison. Warning, host's vitality is critically low. Time to first iconic scene completion, 47 hours, 59 minutes, and counting. Failure will result in system elimination. A translucent, blue-tinted panel materialized in her vision, showing a stark timer that was already ticking down. 47:58. 47:57, panic, sharp and acidic, cut through the fog. Elimination? You mean death? I just got here. I didn't even sign up for this. Registration was auto-confirmed upon soul wavelength synchronization. Please focus, host. Your first iconic scene, the gala confrontation. You must, at the Jinhu City Annual Charity Gala tonight, publicly confront the male lead, Shang Jiang, and accuse him of breaking his promise to you. Scene authenticity must be rated above 70% for completion. Tonight? Xingyue struggled to sit up, her body feeling weak and unfamiliar. I'm in a hospital gown. I look like I got run over by a truck of melancholy. What promise? I don't know any promises. Character backfill data indicates Shang Jiang's grandfather and your grandfather were old friends. A vague betrothal was hinted at in your childhood, before you were sent away. He has never acknowledged it. Your character is deeply fixated on this promise. Your accusation should be emotionally charged, filled with longing and betrayal. Great. So I have to go be humiliated, on purpose, in front of high society, while wearing a backless paper dress. Fantastic system. 5 stars. Her designer's mind, even through the panic, began to whir. It was a problem. A catastrophic, insane problem. But it was, at its core, a design challenge. She needed to create an impact with limited resources, on a tight deadline, for a specific audience. She threw off the thin hospital blanket. Her legs were shaky, but they worked. She shuffled to the small mirror in the corner. The face staring back was pale, with shadows under its eyes, but it was undeniably lovely in a delicate, ethereal way. A small, rose-shaped birthmark sat high on her left cheekbone. The original Xingyue had hated it, seeing it as a flaw. The designer in her now saw it as a unique signature, a focal point. Okay, she whispered to her reflection, the timer in her peripheral vision a constant, pulsing threat. Let's work with what we've got. Her resources were the hospital room. Her tools were her hands and a brain trained in visual problem solving. She ripped the top sheet off the bed. It was a coarse, ugly beige. The curtain dividing her room from the next was a slightly better quality, a muted slate blue. She yanked it down, the rings clattering. Nurse Wang, a kind-faced woman, rushed in. Miss Lin. You shouldn't be out of bed. You need rest. Nurse Wang, Xingyue said, turning on her with an intensity born of sheer survival. I need your help. I need to go to the gala tonight. It's a matter of family honor. Life and death. But you're in no state. And your family hasn't even called, exactly. So I need to make a statement. Do you have any safety pins? Scissors? Hairspray? And, do any of the nurses have a spare lipstick? Something bold. Red. Nurse Wang looked bewildered, but something in Xingyue's desperate, clear gaze moved her. An hour later, Xingyue stood transformed. The slate blue curtain was now a asymmetrical, draped Grecian-style gown, pinned securely at one shoulder with a dramatic cluster of safety pins that she'd bent into a crude artful shape. The beige sheet was twisted into a wide, obi-like sash around her waist, cinching the ethereal draping. She'd used medical tape to create intricate, geometric patterns on the skirt's sheer layers, created from the curtain liner. Nurse Wang's donated red lipstick was a slash of defiant color on her lips. She'd backcombed her dark hair into an intentionally messy, textured updo, using the hospital's sterile gel for hold. She looked less like a patient and more like an avant-garde model who'd walked straight out of a post-apocalyptic runway show. Tragic, beautiful, and strangely powerful. It's certainly a look, Nurse Wang said, eyes wide. It's catastrophic chic, Xingyue said, a wild grin touching her lips. Now, I need a ride. The Jinhu City Charity Gala was a sea of silk, diamonds, and soft, moneyed laughter. Xingyue slipped in through a service entrance, her heart hammering against her ribs. The timer read 15 minutes and 32 seconds. She spotted him immediately. Shang Jiang. He stood near a towering ice sculpture, holding a crystal tumbler. He was taller than she'd imagined, with a lean, athletic build that his tailored tuxedo did little to conceal. His hair was dark, his jawline sharp, but it was his eyes that caught her. They were scanning the room with a detached, analytical coolness, not the brooding intensity the novel described. This was it. No script. Just the directive: confront. Accuse. Gathering the fabric of her curtain gown, she marched forward. A path cleared for her, not out of respect, but out of sheer, bewildered shock. Whispers erupted in her wake. Is that Lin Xingyue? What is she wearing? Is this some kind of performance art? Is she ill? She stopped before Shang Jiang. The room fell silent. He turned, and those cool eyes swept over her, from her desperate updo to her taped hem gown. His expression didn't change, but a flicker of something not recognition, but intense curiosity lit in his gaze. Here goes nothing. Xingyue lifted her chin, channeling all her fear, her frustration at this absurd situation, into her performance. Her voice, when it came, was clear and carried, trembling with manufactured emotion. Shang Jiang. She let the name hang. Do the stars we once tried to count mean nothing? You looked at the same sky and made a vow. Was it written in water, that promise? Was I just a placeholder for your convenience, a ghost to be conveniently forgotten once the lights of Jinhu City blinded you? It was pure, unadulterated melodrama. The kind of vague, poetic accusation that could mean anything. She saw his eyebrows lift a millimeter. The crowd held its breath. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a pained whisper meant only for him, but carrying in the silent hall. You promised me a constellation, and you left me with this. She gestured vaguely at herself, at her makeshift gown, at the entire ridiculous, tragic spectacle. Is this what becomes of forgotten things? We dress ourselves in scraps and demand to be seen? The ding that echoed in her mind was the sweetest sound she'd ever heard. Ding. Iconic scene number 1, the gala confrontation, completed. Authenticity rating, 82%. Reward, 24-hour lifespan extension. Bonus for exceptional creativity, instant makeover 24-hour glamour aura unlocked. Used to enhance physical appearance for 1 day. Next scene will unlock in 12 hours. The timer in her vision blinked and reset to midnight. Relief, sweet and dizzying, washed over her. Shang Jiang hadn't moved. He studied her face, his gaze lingering on the rose birthmark, then traveling back to her eyes. He didn't look angry, insulted, or even embarrassed. He looked fascinated. Like she was a complex equation he'd just been handed. Lin Xingyue, he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that held none of the novel's prescribed coldness. It was neutral, assessing. Your presentation is memorable. Before he could say more, before she could even process her victory, a familiar, honey-sweet voice cut through the air. Xingyue? Is that you? Oh my goodness, what happened? Are you unwell? Lin Xinrui glided over, a vision in a blush pink Chanel gown, her face a mask of perfectly concerned sisterly love. She slipped a possessive hand onto Shang Jiang's arm. But as Xinrui's eyes met Xingyue's, the concern in them melted away for a split second, replaced by a shock of pure, venomous confusion. Her lips, smiling for the crowd, moved almost imperceptibly as she leaned in to air-kiss Xingyue's cheek. The words were a venomous whisper, meant for Xingyue alone. Who are you? You're supposed to be comatose. Then she was back, all sugary concern, leading a shell-shocked socialite away. She's been so fragile since coming home, poor thing. Xingyue stood frozen, the euphoria of survival instantly freezing over. The fake daughter wasn't just a brat. She knew the script. And Xingyue, by surviving and showing up, had just torn page 1 to shreds. Shang Jiang was still watching her, his earlier curiosity now tinged with a new, sharp speculation. The game, it seemed, was far more complicated than just surviving scenes. She had 24 hours to breathe. And a sister who apparently wanted her story to stay tragically, permanently, on hold. Back in the sterile silence of her hospital room, now feeling more like a debriefing chamber, Lin Xingyue stared at the system panel floating in her vision. Host, Lin Xingyue. Iconic scenes completed, January 10th. Current lifespan, 24 hours, 12 minutes. Next scene unlock in, 11 hours, 47 minutes. Active buff, glamour aura, 23 hours remaining. But glamour aura was a subtle, fascinating thing. It wasn't a magic filter. When she looked in the small mirror, her face was still hers, the rose birthmark, the tired eyes. But the light seemed to catch her features more kindly. Her hair, even in its deliberately messy state, had a healthy sheen. There was an undeniable presence about her, a confidence in her posture she didn't quite feel inside. It was the difference between being a person and being a focus point. She had time. Not much, but she wasn't on a countdown to immediate oblivion. It allowed the fear to recede just enough for her analytical mind to kick into high gear. Two problems loomed larger than the next scene. First, Lin Xinrui. The fake sister's whisper wasn't just malice, it was meta. She'd referenced a script. You're supposed to be comatose. That implied knowledge of a storyline, of an expected outcome. Was Xinrui also a transmigrator? A system holder? Or just a very perceptive, very nasty person who'd noticed the original Xingyue's trajectory toward a breakdown? Xingyue filed it under existential threat, category, sister-shaped. Second, Shang Jiang. He hadn't reacted like a novel's cold CEO. There was no disdain, no public dismissal. His curiosity had been clinical, like a scientist observing a fascinating new strain of bacteria. That was useful. Predictable anger she could work with. Unpredictable curiosity was a wild card. A soft chime echoed in her mind. A new system function blinked. Scene forecast, iconic scene number 2, the rainy night rescue, core action. Host must be rendered vulnerable in a rainstorm and be physically rescued via vehicle by target, Shang Jiang. Key elements, genuine distress, atmospheric precipitation, vehicular intervention. Authenticity threshold, 75% of course, Xingyue muttered, sitting on the edge of the bed. Because what's more iconic than a drowned rat heroine scooped up by a princely limo? She sighed, but her brain was already mapping logistics. She needed control. Last time, she'd controlled the narrative through aesthetic chaos. This time, she needed to control the environment. First, she needed to find Shang Jiang. The system gave her a name, not a GPS signal. Her new glamour aura might open doors, but it wasn't a hacking tool. Then she remembered Nurse Wang's gossipy friend, the one who'd brought the lipstick. 15 minutes and a heartfelt, and only slightly performative, story about needing to thank a benefactor from the gala. Later, Xingyue had a crucial piece of intel, delivered with a wink. My cousin's friend drives a delivery truck near the Shang Corporation's new innovation park in the West District. She says the young Master Shang is there almost every day this week, personally overseeing things. Very hands-on, unlike those other pampered heirs. Bingo. Location acquired. Next, the weather. A quick check of her phone, a cheap, outdated model that was part of her poor real daughter kit, showed a 90% chance of precipitation in the West District tomorrow evening. The system wanted a rainy night. She would give it one. The final piece, distress. She refused to be a passive puddle. Her distress would be a work of art. A controlled accident. The following evening, as bruised purple clouds gathered over Jinhu City's skyline, Xingyue stood at the edge of the Shang Corporation Innovation Park construction site. She'd used her last bit of cash on a rideshare. Her attire was a deliberate choice: simple white sneakers, jeans, and a thin, light gray linen shirt. Clothes that would look utterly pathetic when soaked. The glamour aura made the ordinary outfit look intentionally minimalist and chic. For now. She saw him. Shang Jiang was 50 meters away, dressed not in a tuxedo but in dark, practical trousers, leather boots, and a tailored gray coat that somehow managed to look both rugged and expensive. He was studying a set of blueprints with an engineer, pointing at something on the skeleton of a building. He looked competent, focused, and completely in his element. Showtime. Xingyue took a deep breath, calculating angles and trajectories. She waited for a moment when he glanced up from the plans, his gaze sweeping the site. She stepped forward, not towards him, but towards a large, strategically chosen puddle left by yesterday's rain and this morning's hose down. With a carefully measured stumble, she planted her foot right at the puddle's edge, using her momentum to kick a spectacular arc of muddy water directly across the space between them. It landed with a wet splat across the lower half of his coat and his impeccable boots. The engineer gasped. Two bodyguards, who she hadn't even noticed standing in the shadows, tensed. Shang Jiang looked down slowly, then up at her. Xingyue put on her best mortified, wide-eyed expression. Oh. Oh, no. I'm so sorry. I was just walking and I slipped, and. She let her voice trail off, wringing her hands. The first cold drops of rain began to fall, dotting the dusty ground. Shang Jiang's expression was unreadable. He held up a hand to stop his bodyguard from advancing. His eyes, that disconcertingly analytical gray, studied her. Not her face, but the entire scene: the puddle, her positioning, the timing. Lin Xingyue, he said, his tone flat. The charity gala wasn't enough? Now you're conducting hydrological experiments on my construction site? It was an accident, she insisted, the rain beginning to fall in earnest now, soaking through her linen shirt. The glamour aura fought valiantly, making her look like a rain-soaked model in a melancholy perfume advert, but she was getting genuinely cold and wet. I'm sure, he said, a hint of something amusement? Touching his voice. He gestured to his soiled coat. This is Italian wool. It does not appreciate local mud. I'll pay for the cleaning, she offered weakly, shivering. He stared at her for another long moment as the rain intensified, plastering her hair to her cheeks. The expected offer of a ride, the rescue, didn't come. He just stood there, getting rained on with her, as if waiting for something. Why isn't it working? She screamed internally. She was wet, she was distressed, genuinely now, from the cold. He was here with a car, a sleek, black SUV was parked nearby. All the elements were present. Alert, the system's voice chimed, unhelpfully. Scene authenticity reading is below threshold. Current distress levels are deemed performative. Genuine peril is required for rescue protocol. Genuine peril? She wanted to curse the system to its digital core. Fine. If it wanted genuine, she'd give it genuine. Look, I'm truly sorry to have bothered you, she said, her teeth starting to chatter. She turned as if to walk away into the downpour, but as she passed the front of his SUV, she subtly, quickly, used her house key to jab the valve stem on the SUV's front tire. She'd watched a YouTube video on flat tires once during an all-nighter. A faint, persistent hiss answered her. She took about 20 dramatic, stumbling steps into the sheeting rain, now effectively blinded and freezing. The glamour aura was losing the battle, she just looked like a drowned, shivering woman. The hiss became a loud whoosh. She heard a curse from the engineer. Sir, your tire. Perfect. She kept walking, the darkness and rain swallowing her. This was genuine. She was cold, lost, disoriented. The rescue had to come now. Headlights cut through the gray curtain, illuminating the driving rain. The black SUV pulled up beside her, riding on a visibly flat front tire with a determined limp. The passenger window slid down. Get in, Shang Jiang said, his voice broking no argument. Before you cause a diplomatic incident by freezing to death on my company's doorstep. The ding was a symphony. Ding. Iconic scene number 2, the rainy night rescue, completed. Authenticity rating, 88%. Reward, 24-hour lifespan extension. New skill unlocked, eavesdropper's echo activate to hear all whispers and murmurs about the host within a 10-meter radius for 1 hour. Next scene forecast in 24 hours. Current lifespan, 48 hours, 11 minutes. Xingyue practically fell into the luxurious, warm interior of the SUV. The smell of leather and clean, masculine scent enveloped her. Shangjiang got in the other side, dripping onto the fine upholstery. He didn't speak to her, just gave the driver an address, not the Lin estate, but a high-end apartment building in the city center. Thank you, Xingyue said quietly, her shivering starting to subside. He didn't acknowledge her. He was looking at his phone, his profile sharp in the dashboard lights. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken questions. They arrived at the apartment building's underground garage. As the driver came around to open her door, Shangjiang finally spoke, still not looking at her. The Lin family home is a 30-minute drive in this weather. You'll stay in a guest suite here tonight. My assistant will bring you dry clothes. His tone left no room for protest. It wasn't kindness, it was logistical efficiency. As she slid out, grateful and bewildered, he finally turned his head. The analytical look was back, but darker now. Your methods are unorthodox, Miss Lin. And surprisingly effective. Before she could reply, he nodded to the driver, and the window slid up, leaving her standing in the silent, sterile garage with a uniformed concierge already approaching with an umbrella. Alone in the pristine, minimalist guest suite minutes later, wrapped in an impossibly soft robe, Xingyue's mind raced. She'd done it. 2 scenes. She had a 48-hour buffer. She had new skills. On impulse, she activated eavesdropper's echo. The world exploded in sound. Not loud sounds, but the soft, hidden undercurrent of the building. The hum of the elevator. The distant clink of dishes from another apartment. And voices. Muffled, but clear. One voice was Shangjiang's, cool and low, coming from what sounded like a vent or the adjacent room's balcony. No, her behavior is completely off-book. The gala was a spectacle, but calculated. Tonight was strategic. Check again. I want full psychiatric evaluations from the last 2 years, not just the recent breakdown. Look for any history of personality disorders, or theatrical training. A chill that had nothing to do with the rain seeped into Xingyue's bones. He wasn't just curious. He was investigating her. Not for being troublesome, but for being inconsistent. He was comparing her to a book. And he just used the exact same word Xingyue had implied. Script. Book. He knew. Or at least, he suspected she wasn't following one. The echo skill faded, leaving her in terrifying silence. She had survived the rain, but she was now treading water in a much deeper, much darker ocean. Shangjiang wasn't her rescuer or her destined love interest. He was the most dangerous audience member of all, the one who knew the play was off script, and was intently watching the actress to figure out why. The sterile luxury of Shangjiang's guest suite felt more like a gilded cage than a refuge. Lin Xingyue spent a sleepless night, her mind churning. The eavesdropper's echo had revealed a chilling truth: Shangjiang was operating from a script of his own, and she was an unauthorized edit. He wasn't the brooding, emotionally constipated CEO of the novel. He was a forensic analyst of human behavior, and she was his anomalous case file. The system, however, was blissfully unconcerned with her existential dread. At dawn, it chimed with cheerful brutality. Scene forecast, iconic scene number 3, the jealous cafe encounter, core action. Host must have a beverage thrown upon her by a jealous rival in the presence of target, Shangjiang. Key elements: public venue, liquid projectile, rivals displayed jealousy, target's witness. Authenticity threshold, 70% recommendation. For optimal drama, the beverage should be cold. A drink thrown on me, Xingyue mumbled into the plush pillow. Classy. Truly, the pinnacle of romantic storytelling. She sat up, the panic of the first 2 scenes replaced by a simmering, determined frustration. She was done being a passive recipient of plot points. If the narrative demanded a slapstick humiliation, she would direct it. Her plan was simple, elegant, and involved minimal actual humiliation. She would hire someone. An aspiring actress from a local theater group, perhaps. She'd pay her to play the part of a jealous socialite, stage the encounter at a cafe near Shang Corporation, and ensure Shangjiang had a front row seat. She'd control the liquid, ice water, not coffee, the angle, a glancing splash on the shoulder, not the face, and the aftermath, a dignified, wounded exit. It would be a clinical, efficient completion of a stupid task. Using the cheap phone, she found an online forum for Jinhu City's gig economy and posted a discreet ad, seeking female performer for short, dramatic public interaction. 1-hour commitment. Good pay. Discretion required. Within an hour, she had a reply from a user named Starlight Sarah, who sent a headshot of a girl with overly bright eyes and a theatrical smile. Perfect. Xingyue arranged the meet, 3 p.m. at the Azure Lotus Cafe, a minimalist, overpriced spot frequented by the business elite. She then, with a boldness fueled by her glamour aura, called Shang Zhang's office. A polite assistant answered. This is Lin Xingyue. Could you please inform Mr. Shang that I wish to apologize properly for the inconvenience last night. I'll be at the Azure Lotus Cafe at 3 p.m. today if he can spare a moment. She made her voice sound soft, contrite, and slightly fragile. The perfect impression of a chastened, infatuated girl. The assistant, likely used to fending off such calls, promised to pass the message along. Xingyue didn't need him to agree, she just needed the information to reach him. A man who found her off book would likely be too curious not to show up and observe. At 2:55 p.m., dressed in a simple but elegant cream-colored knit dress, borrowed from the guest suite's suspiciously well-stocked wardrobe, Xingyue took a seat at a prominent table by the window. Her heart was a steady drumbeat against her ribs. She saw Starlight Sarah enter, wearing a flashy designer knockoff and looking nervously around. They made brief eye contact. The plan was set. At 3:05 p.m., Shang Jiang walked in. He didn't look like he'd come for an apology. He looked like he'd come for a board meeting. A crisp navy suit, no tie, his expression one of detached observation. He took a seat at a small table across the cafe, ordered an espresso, and opened a financial tablet, but his gaze kept flicking to her. The hunter in his natural habitat. Showtime. Xingyue gave a subtle nod to Starlight Sarah. The actress took a deep breath, puffed out her chest, and began her march across the cafe. Right on cue, a waiter passed by with a tray holding a tall glass of something vibrantly, irrevocably green. It was a Kale spirulina smoothie, thick as paste. A cold sense of foreboding slithered down Xingyue's spine. That wasn't part of the script. Before Starlight Sarah could reach her, a figure intercepted. It was Lin Xingyue, looking effortlessly chic in a cashmere twinset, a gentle smile on her face. She placed a familiar, restraining hand on the actress's arm. Oh, Sarah, there you are. I've been looking for you about that community theater donation. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes, when they met Xingyue's, were chips of polished ice. She leaned in and whispered something to the actress. Starlight Sarah's eyes widened, she paled, glanced at Xingyue with sudden fear, and scurried away without a backward glance. Xingyue then picked up the thick green smoothie from the waiter's tray with a gracious smile. My usual, thank you. She turned, her smile never wavering as she walked directly toward Xingyue's table. Xingyue. What a lovely surprise. I heard you were recuperating. The movement was a masterpiece of plausible accident. Xingyue's heel caught or appeared to catch on the edge of the rug. She lurched forward. The massive glass of green glope left her hand in a perfect, graceful arc. It didn't just splash. It exploded against Xingyue's chest. The cold was a shock. The thick, viscous liquid soaked instantly through the fine cream wool, a monstrous, dripping stain spreading from collar to waist. Pieces of kale clung to the fabric. The smell of earthy greens and banana was overwhelming. Around them, the cafe fell silent. All eyes were on the tragic, smoothie-splattered real daughter. Shang Jiang had looked up from his tablet, his espresso forgotten. His expression was unreadable. Xingyue's hands flew to her mouth in a perfect pantomime of horror. Oh. Oh, Xingyue. I'm so clumsy. Look at your beautiful dress. It's ruined. Her eyes, however, glittered with triumph. This was no staged accident. This was a targeted, humiliating strike. A hot wave of anger, pure and undiluted, washed over Xingyue. The careful control she'd clung to since arriving in this world shattered. She looked down at the ruin of her dress, at the green slime dripping onto the cafe's pristine floor. She saw the pitying stares, the hidden smirks. She saw Xingyue's victorious mask of faux concern. And something in her snapped. Instead of crying, flinching, or running away, the reactions, the scene, the novel, and Xinrui all demanded. Xingyue began to laugh. It wasn't a hysterical laugh. It was a low, genuine chuckle that rose from her chest, rich and unexpected. She shook her head, green droplets flying from her hair. Avocado chocolate, she declared, her voice clear and carrying in the silent room. She looked straight at Xinrui, her smile wide and utterly unhinged. Don't you think? It's missing something, though. Before anyone could react, Xingyue turned, walked to the next table where a young couple sat staring, and picked up a half-finished, luxurious chocolate milkshake topped with whipped cream and a cherry. Excuse me, she said pleasantly. She returned to her spot, held the milkshake high, and poured it neatly, deliberately, over her own head. The cold chocolate cascaded through her hair, over her shoulders, mixing with the green smoothie in a grotesque, delicious-looking swirl. Whipped cream plopped onto her shoulder. She placed the empty glass back on her table with a soft clink. The entire cafe was paralyzed. Xingyue wiped a streak of chocolate from her cheek, smearing it artistically. She struck a pose, one hand on her hip, a masterpiece of dripping, multicolored absurdity. There. Now we have the full aesthetic. Avocado chocolate. The new, bold spring trend. What do you think, sister? Edgy, right? The silence broke into a ripple of stunned laughter, then outright guffaws. The tension shattered, replaced by bewildered entertainment. The scene was no longer about a poor girl being humiliated, it was about a performance artist doing something inexplicably brave and hilarious. Shang Jiang was no longer just observing. He was staring, his analytical composure completely broken. His mouth was slightly agape. He looked from the dripping, smiling Xingyue to the utterly gobsmacked Xinrui, whose face had gone from triumph to stupefied horror. Ding. Ding. Iconic scene number 3, the jealous cafe encounter, completed. Authenticity rating, 91%, bonus points for innovative subversion and audience engagement. Reward, 24-hour lifespan extension. New skill unlocked, Misfortune Mosaic. The next significant piece of bad luck intended for the host will be reflected back in full upon the originator, within 24 hours. Next scene forecast in 24 hours. Current lifespan, 72 hours. The system's confirmation was a sweet, secondary victory. The primary victory was the look on Xinrui's face. A deep, resonant chuckle cut through the ambient noise. Shang Jiang had stood up. He walked over, stepping around the puddle of mixed beverages. He didn't look at Xinrui. His eyes were locked on Xingyue, gleaming with something akin to savage appreciation. He unbuttoned his tailored navy suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders, over the sticky, colorful mess. The gesture was intimate, proprietary, and sent a fresh wave of whispers through the cafe. Your problem-solving methodology, he said, his voice low, for her ears only, continues to defy all known parameters. He wasn't scolding. He was impressed. He then finally glanced at Xinrui, his gaze turning cool and dismissive. Miss Lin, he said, the formality a weapon. Your clumsiness is becoming a pattern. You should be more careful. The implication that she was the one who'd embarrassed herself was crystal clear. Without another word, he guided a dripping, triumphant Xingyue out of the cafe, leaving a mortified Xinrui standing alone in the wreckage of her own plot. Outside, under the afternoon sun, he looked at her again. Chocolate and kale were drying in her hair. I'll have my driver take you home, he stated. The Lin home? She asked, her adrenaline fading, leaving her feeling sticky and surreal. No, he said, a new, calculating look in his eye. My apartment. You need a shower. And he paused, have some questions that require answers less performative than a smoothie-based protest art. As his SUV pulled away, Xingyue, wrapped in his expensive, now doomed jacket, finally processed her new skill. Misfortune Mosaic. Xinrui had just wished a world of bad luck on her. And now, within 24 hours, that bad luck would boomerang back. For the first time, Xingyue felt a flicker of something other than survival anxiety. It felt like the beginnings of leverage. She had survived the slapstick. She had turned the script on its head. And she had just made the most dangerous man in her world genuinely, deeply curious. The game was escalating. And she was no longer just a player trying not to lose. She was starting to learn the rules well enough to break them. The shower in Shang Jiang's apartment was a transcendent experience. It was a rainfall-style waterfall of perfectly heated water that washed away not just the kale chocolate sludge, but a layer of her lingering panic. Wrapped in another impossibly soft robe, did this man have a closet dedicated to guest loungewear? Xingyue faced her reflection. The glamour aura was gone, expired after its 24-hour run. She looked like herself again, clean, pale, the rose birthmark prominent on her cheek. But the eyes staring back were different. Sharper. Weary, but lit with a new, defiant glint. She found Shang Jiang not in a living room, but in a dedicated office that overlooked the glittering Jinhu skyline. The room was a study in controlled power, sleek lines, a monolithic desk of dark wood, walls lined with books on economics, structural engineering, and interestingly cognitive psychology. He was standing by the window, holding 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Water," he said, handing her one. "Given the sugar content you just absorbed, hydration is advisable." "A prudent diagnosis, doctor," she replied, taking the glass. The formality was a shield. The memory of him draping his jacket over her, of that look in his eyes, was unnerving. He didn't sit. He leaned against his desk, studying her with that now familiar analytical focus. The cafe performance. A calculated de-escalation, or genuine reactive improvisation? "Can't it be both?" she countered, taking a sip. "A girl has to multitask. Survive the scene, survive the sister." "The scene," he repeated, rolling the word around like an unfamiliar specimen. "You refer to these dramatic set pieces with a peculiar detachment. As if completing a task list." Her heart stuttered, but she kept her face neutral. "Aren't they? For a woman in my position, every public appearance is a task. A performance to either secure a future or avoid being erased from the family album." He smiled, a thin, razor-sharp thing that didn't reach his eyes. An apt metaphor. "Erasure." He set his glass down. "Your psychiatric records show a history of depressive episodes, social anxiety, a personality prone to passive acceptance. The woman at the gala, in the rain, and certainly the one covered in dessert, she is not prone to passive acceptance." Here it was. The interrogation. "Near-death experiences can be clarifying," she said, weaving truth into the lie. "Waking up in that hospital bed, it was like seeing the script of my life for the first time. And I didn't like my part." "So you rewrote it?" "I'm ad-libbing." With remarkable consistency toward a specific goal. She met his gaze. "And what goal is that, Mr. Shang?" "Access," he stated simply. "To me." The bluntness stole her breath. She couldn't deny it. The system scenes made it undeniable. She forced a shaky laugh. "Is it so strange? You're the most eligible bachelor in Jinhu. My family sees you as a life raft. For a drowning woman, even a suspicious-looking raft is attractive." He watched her, silent for a long moment. The hum of the city below filled the room. "You're a terrible liar when you try to be conventional, Lin Xingyue. But when you embrace the absurd, you become compellingly truthful." He pushed off the desk. "We'll continue this later. My driver will take you home." "Your family is inquiring." The dismissal was clear. As she was ushered out, the system chimed. Scene forecast, iconic scene number 4, the protective embrace, core action. Host must be pulled into target's arms during a moment of perceived physical threat. Key elements, sudden danger, instinctive protective action, close physical proximity. Authenticity threshold, 80% warning, perceived threat must elicit genuine adrenal response from target. Higher threshold. He had to feel she was in danger. This was getting trickier. She couldn't just stage a stumble. She needed a credible threat that would trigger Shang Zhang's instincts, not just his curiosity. Back at the oppressive Lin mansion, the atmosphere was icy. Her father didn't look at her. Her mother wrung her hands, murmuring about scandalous behavior and smoothie stains on social media. Lin Xinrui was conspicuously absent, likely licking her wounds. The misfortune mosaic timer ticked in her mind, 18 hours remaining. Whatever Xinrui was planning, it was coming. It gave Xingyue an idea. The next day, she put her plan into motion. It was crude, but it had to work. She used the last of the allowance her grandfather had set up for her, the one her parents forgot to mention, to hire a large, mildly intimidating man named Big Mao from the same gig forum. His profile picture showed him flexing in a tank top. His acting skills were dubious, but his appearance was perfect. The plan, Big Mao would accost her on the sidewalk just outside the Shang Corporation headquarters at noon, when Shang Jiang often left for lunch. He'd shout about a debt, grab her arm roughly. Shang Jiang would see, intervene, pull her to safety. Embrace. Scene complete. At 11:55 a.m., Xingyue loitered nervously by a sleek planter outside the Shang Corp tower. She saw Big Mao loitering near a food cart, looking more confused than menacing. Right on schedule, the glass door slid open and Shang Jiang emerged, talking on his phone, followed by his usual, discreet bodyguard. Now, Big Mao. Now. Big Mao started toward her, his face screwing up in what he must have thought was a threatening scowl. You. Missy. Your brother owes me money. His voice was more whiny than wrathful. He reached for her arm. Just then, a roaring engine screamed down the street. A paparazzo on a neon green electric scooter, camera raised, swerved onto the sidewalk to get a shot of Shang Jiang. He was moving too fast, eyes glued to his viewfinder, not to the path. He was headed directly for Xingyue. Time compressed. The scooter's whine filled her ears. Big Mao's ridiculous threat was forgotten. Genuine, electric terror shot through her veins. This wasn't staged. This was a ton of metal and plastic about to break her legs. She froze. A blur of gray moved faster than she thought possible. Shang Jiang didn't shout. He didn't hesitate. He dropped his phone, crossed the distance in 2 powerful strides, and his arm hooked around her waist, yanking her back and spinning her away from the hurtling scooter with a force that stole her breath. The scooter clipped the planter where she'd been standing, sending the paparazzo sprawling with a yelp and a crash of plastic. But Xingyue didn't see it. Her world had narrowed to the hard, unyielding wall of Shang Jiang's chest, to the iron band of his arm locked around her, to the rapid, steady beat of his heart against her ear. He had pulled her so tightly against him she could feel the contours of his body, the lean muscle, the surprising breadth of his shoulders, and something else. Beneath the fine fabric of his suit jacket and shirt, there was a layer of rigidity. Not the softness of flesh, but the structured, flexible resistance of armor. A tactical vest. A CEO who wore body armor to lunch. He didn't let go immediately. His head was tilted down, his chin nearly brushing her hair. She could feel his breath, even and controlled. His other hand had come up, cradling the back of her head in a gesture that was fiercely, instinctively protective. Are you hurt? His voice was a low vibration against her. She couldn't speak. She shook her head, her face still pressed against the hidden armor. The scent of him, sandalwood, crisp linen, and something metallic was everywhere. Ding. Ding. Iconic scene number 4, the protective embrace, completed. Authenticity rating, 95%, genuine threat detected, high-intensity protective response. Reward, 24-hour lifespan extension. New skill unlocked, one-time time pause, 30 seconds. Next scene forecast in 24 hours. Current lifespan, 96 hours. The system's message was a distant echo. The reality was the solidity of him, the lingering shock of the impact that didn't happen, and the chilling implication of the body armor. Slowly, his grip loosened. He set her back on her feet, his hands lingering on her shoulders for a moment, ensuring she was steady. His gaze was no longer analytical. It was dark, intense, scanning her face for injury, then flicking to the groaning paparazzo, to where Big Mao stood gaping, then back to her. The protective ferocity was receding, replaced by a cold, sharp suspicion. Who was that man? He asked, his voice now a blade. He nodded toward Big Mao, who was trying to edge away. I don't know, Xingyue stammered, the truth this time. He said something about a debt. Shang Jiang made a minute gesture with his fingers. His bodyguard, who had been checking on the paparazzo, immediately moved to intercept Big Mao. The would-be actor looked ready to cry. Shang Jiang's attention returned to her. The moment of raw protection was gone, sealed away. But something had changed. He had touched her not as a subject of study, but as a person to be shielded. And she had felt what he hid beneath the CEO facade. This area is insecure, he stated, all business again. My driver will take you wherever you need to go. It wasn't an offer. As she was led to the car, she saw his bodyguard talking to a now sobbing Big Mao. Her hired threat was being neutralized. And Shang Jiang was already back on his phone, issuing terse commands, his face a mask of cold command. But for a split second, his eyes found hers through the car window. The message was clear: this incident is not over. Later that evening, back in her sterile room at the Lin house, the other shoe dropped. A scream echoed through the West Wing, followed by a crash and a series of frantic curses. It was Lin Xingrui. Xingyue crept to the hallway. From the top of the grand staircase, she saw her sister standing on the marble floor of the foyer, clutching her ankle. One of her sky-high stiletto heels had snapped clean off. A large, jagged piece of a shattered Ming-style vase lay nearby. Xingrui had apparently taken a dramatic and painful tumble. Misfortune mosaic complete. The bad luck meant for Xingyue the humiliating fall. The broken precious object had boomeranged. As Xingrui whimpered, blaming the slippery floor, their mother fussing over her, Xingyue quietly retreated. She had survived a genuine threat, unlocked a power to freeze time, and witnessed her rival's own plot twist against her. But the victory felt hollow. Because now she knew with terrifying certainty, Shang Jiang was not just a wealthy heir playing business. He was a man who expected violence, who wore armor under Armani. And her chaotic, scene-driven survival dance had just stumbled her directly into his crosshairs. The iconic scenes were bringing them together, but each collision was revealing a deeper, more dangerous layer of the world she'd been thrown into. She was no longer just fighting a system and a fake sister. She was tangling with a man who had secrets worth armoring himself for. And he was starting to think hers might be just as dangerous. The fallout from the sidewalk incident was a silent, seismic shift. No angry calls from the Lin family. No summons to Shang Jiang's office for further interrogation. Instead, a heavy, gilded envelope arrived at the Lin mansion the next day, addressed to Lin Xingyue in elegant, embossed script. An invitation to the Shang family's annual mid-autumn masquerade ball. It was not sent by Shang Jiang. It was issued by the Shang family matriarch, Jiang Mei, Shang Jiang's grandmother and the true, steel-spined power behind the dynasty. This was not an olive branch, it was a subpoena to the highest court of Jinhu society. She wants to see the girl who caused the smoothie scandal and nearly got run over by a paparazzo, Lin Xingrui sneered, her ankle wrapped and her temper fell. She held her own identical invitation like a winning lottery ticket. Grandmother Shang eats ambitious little moths like you for breakfast, Xingyue. You'll humiliate yourself and drag our family name through the mud. Again. Xingyue ignored her, her mind already racing. The system had confirmed it hours earlier. Scene forecast, iconic scene number 5, the masked ball confession, core action. While isolated with target at a masked ball, target must confess, you are different. Key elements, masquerade setting, private balcony or equivalent, verbal confession of uniqueness. Authenticity threshold, 85% note, ambient moonlight is strongly suggested for optimal atmospheric scoring. A confession. Not a rescue, not a humiliation. A moment of genuine, if scripted, emotional acknowledgement. The highest threshold yet. And the setting was a gift: anonymity, romance, built-in seclusion. But how to ensure Shang Jiang would seek her out in a sea of masks? And how to make him say those exact words? Her answer came from an unexpected source: design. The invitation stipulated elegant masquerade, full face coverings encouraged. This was her medium. She wouldn't just wear a mask, she would become one. Using the last of her grandfather's hidden funds, she purchased materials not from a boutique, but from an artist's supply store and a tech hobby shop. For 2 days, she locked herself in her room, ignoring her mother's pleas and Xingrui's barbed comments through the door. She worked with a feverish focus she hadn't felt since her final portfolio. The night of the ball, when she descended the staircase, the sneer died on Xingrui's lips. Their parents fell silent. Xingyue wore a gown of layered midnight blue chiffon, simple and flowing. But it was the mask that commanded attention. She had constructed it from a lightweight polymer, molded to the upper half of her face. It was painted a deep, matte black, but across it, she had used photoluminescent paint to create a delicate, sweeping constellation, the exact pattern of the rose cluster, its central star positioned perfectly over her own rose birthmark. Tiny, fiber-optic threads woven into the headpiece and the mask's edges emitted a soft, pulsing blue light, mimicking twinkling stars. It was technology disguised as magic, astronomy rendered as intimate art. She wasn't hiding. She was highlighting. Making her flaw the central mystery. You look like a cheap planetarium show, Xingrui finally managed, her own bejeweled bird mask suddenly looking garish and obvious. Thank you, Xingyue said serenely, adjusting a tiny, hidden switch that made the constellation pulse rhythmically. I was going for celestial nuisance. The Shang family estate was a realm of old money and sharper power. The ballroom was a swirl of silk, velvet, and glittering masks, a symphony of whispered intrigue. Xingyue moved through the crowd, a dark, quiet nebula. She saw Shang Jiang almost immediately. He stood near his grandmother, a formidable woman with silver hair in a severe bun. He wore a simple, perfectly fitted black tuxedo. His mask was a sleek half-face of black and silver, geometric and impersonal. But she'd recognize that posture anywhere, the alert stillness, the way his head turned, scanning the room like a radar dish. She didn't approach. She became a satellite, orbiting at the edges of his awareness. She let the unique, pulsing light of her mask draw sidelong glances, murmurs of curiosity. She made sure to pass by him once, close enough for him to catch the faint, clean scent of her soap amid the cloud of perfumes. His head turned, tracking her for a second before returning to his conversation. Good. He was aware. Now, for the isolation. The system suggested a balcony. The grand terrace overlooking the moonlit gardens was crowded with couples. Too public. She needed a smaller, more private one. During a lull, she slipped through a less frequented archway, finding a narrow, wrought iron balcony tucked around the side of the mansion. It was just large enough for two. The moon, a perfect silver disk, hung heavy in the sky. Perfect. She took a deep breath and activated her new skill. One-time time pause, 30 seconds. The world didn't freeze so much as slow to an impossible, thick honey. The music from the ballroom became a deep, distorted groan. A champagne bubble hung motionless in the air beside her. She had half a minute of stolen time. Moving through the syrupy air was an effort. She pulled a small, discreet silver pen from her clutch, a pen she'd taken from Shang Zhang's office during her last visit. She scribbled a note on a scrap of parchment paper she'd brought. The script is flawed. The author missed a key variable. Find me where the rose star aligns with the moon. The anomaly. She pressed the note, along with the pen, into the hand of a passing waiter caught mid-stride, angling it so it would be visible when time resumed. She then positioned herself on the small balcony, back to the archway, the moonlight bathing her and making the constellation on her mask glow. Time snapped back. The music swelled. The bubble rose. The waiter looked down, startled at the items in his hand, read the note, and with a confused look, began moving towards Shang Jiang. Xingyue's heart hammered. It was a gamble. A direct reference to his investigation, to his own secret language of scripts and variables. Would curiosity or caution win? Minutes stretched. She listened to the distant laughter, the waltz. Had she overplayed? Then, the sound of a single, firm footstep on the flagstones behind her. The air changed, charged with a familiar, focused intensity. She didn't turn. A dramatic summoning, Shang Zhang's voice came, low and close. He stepped onto the balcony, the space suddenly feeling minuscule. He held up the note. The anomaly. Arrogant label. Accurate, though, she said softly, finally turning to face him. Through the slits of his geometric mask, his eyes were dark pools, reflecting the moonlight and the pulse of her own. Why this balcony? He asked, not taking the bait about the note immediately. It's the only one where, right now, the moon sits directly above the rose garden, she said, gesturing with her chin. A private alignment. He followed her gaze, then looked back at her mask, at the glowing star over her birthmark. Understanding dawned. The rose star. Silence fell between them, filled only by the distant music. The moon painted everything in monochrome silver. You've caused a significant amount of data corruption in a very short time, Lin Xingyue, he said finally, his voice devoid of its usual analytical chill. It was quieter, almost contemplative. My initial hypothesis was dissociative identity triggered by trauma. Then, calculated performance for social climbing. Now, I find the models insufficient. He took a half step closer. She could see the fine grain of his black mask, the line of his jaw beneath it. You speak of scripts. You engineer encounters with the precision of a field operative, yet your methods are utterly chaotic. You deflect humiliation with absurdity and respond to genuine threats with a disturbing lack of surprise. His gaze was locked on hers, piercing. Who are you? This was the moment. The confession wasn't about romance, it was about recognition. I'm the variable your script didn't account for, she whispered, holding his gaze. The plot twist you didn't see coming. He stared at her for a long, long moment. The music from the ballroom swelled into a final, triumphant crescendo, then ended. In the sudden relative quiet, his words were clear and deliberate, a verdict delivered. You are different. Ding. Ding. Iconic scene number 5, the masked ball confession, completed. Authenticity rating, 92%, high atmospheric synergy, direct verbal confirmation. Reward, 24-hour lifespan extension. New skill unlocked, linguist's lens understand any spoken language for 12 hours. Mystery gift package unlocked, a page from the original. Current lifespan, 120 hours. A flood of relief was instantly tempered by a new, icy trickle of knowledge into her mind, the linguist's lens activating. And with it, the system deposited the gift, a single, ghostly page of text, visible only to her. It was a novel page. Her novel page. Describing Lin Xingyue's fate, the car skidded on the rain-slicked road, a tragic end to a quiet, unhappy life. She pushed the grim prophecy aside. She had his confession. The scene was won. But Shang Jiang wasn't finished. The confession seemed to have opened a door, not to intimacy, but to a new layer of his mystery. You're right, he said, his voice dropping even further, becoming almost inaudible. The script is flawed. Because I'm not the lead. Before she could process that, a new voice cut through the night, cold, authoritative, and dripping with a disdain far deeper than Shang Jiang's ever was. Jiang. I see you found the evening's distraction. A man appeared in the archway. Taller, broader than Shang Jiang, wearing a mask of pure white, featureless porcelain that was far more terrifying than any monster. His presence was an avalanche of quiet authority. Shang Jiang, the powerful, armored CEO, subtly tensed. Not with fear, but with the alertness of a soldier recognizing his general. The man in the white mask ignored Xingyue completely. He spoke again, not in Mandarin, but in a rapid, guttural dialect Shanghainese, her new linguist's lens supplied. The words translated instantly in her mind. Is this the anomaly in the Lin family variable? She's drawing too much attention. The board is asking questions. Your directive was to observe and stabilize, not to engage. She's a risk. Eliminate the variable. Xingyue's blood turned to ice. Shang Jiang didn't turn his head. He answered in the same dialect, his tone flat, respectful, but firm. The variable is contained. Her unpredictability may be an asset. The original narrative is already compromised. She sees the cracks. She's a loose wire, the man Shang Mo, her mind screamed, the true heir responded, his masked face finally turning a fraction toward her. The blank porcelain was utterly dehumanizing. Loose wires cause system failures. Clean it up, Jiang. Or I will. With a last, dismissive glance that swept over Xingyue as if she were a stain on the balcony, Shang Yimou turned and melted back into the ballroom. The moonlit romance was gone, shattered. The air was now thick with threat. Xingyue stood frozen, the glowing stars on her mask feeling suddenly like a target. Shang Jiang finally looked at her. The confession in his eyes was gone, replaced by something harder, more complex. A calculation that now included survival hers, and possibly his own. The game you're playing, he said, his voice back to its cool, businesslike tone, but with an undercurrent of warning she'd never heard before. You just met the game master. And he doesn't like new players. He offered his arm, a gesture that was no longer romantic, but a statement of control. Come. I'll take you home. We need to revise our strategy. As she took his arm, the pulse of her mask flickered. She had gotten her confession. She had survived another scene. But she had also just peered behind the curtain of her world, and seen not a loving author, but a cold, corporate boardroom willing to eliminate variables. And the man beside her, the one the system demanded she romance, was caught between being her fellow player and the one assigned to clean her up. The drive back from the masquerade was a silence so dense it felt like a third passenger. Shang Jiang didn't speak. He stared out the window at the neon-soaked streets of Jinhu, his profile carved from granite in the intermittent light. The easy curiosity, the analytical detachment, all of it was gone, replaced by a focused tension that vibrated in the space between them. Xingyue's mind reeled. Eliminate the variable. The words, translated perfectly by the linguist's lens, played on a loop. Shang Mo, the faceless power behind the throne, saw her as a system error. And Shang Jiang, he had argued for her. Called her an asset. But at what cost? He didn't take her to the Lin mansion. The SUV glided to a stop in front of a nondescript, ultramodern office building in the financial district, its lobby dark. My operational headquarters, he said tersely, exiting the vehicle. It wasn't an invitation, it was a command. She followed, her midnight blue gown whispering against the polished concrete floor of the empty lobby. They took a private elevator to the top floor. The space was nothing like his apartment or his corporate office. This was a command center. One wall was a massive bank of live surveillance feeds, stock tickers, news channels, and what looked like real-time traffic cams from around the city. Another wall held a gigantic, intricate flowchart, strings and pins connecting photos of business leaders, politicians, and Lin family members. Her own hospital photo was there, a pin stuck through it. The sight sent a jolt through her. Sit, he said, nodding to a sleek chair in front of a minimalist desk. He shrugged off his tuxedo jacket, revealing the tailored shirt beneath. Even here, even now, she could discern the slight, telltale line of the tactical vest underneath. You're not the male lead, she stated, her voice surprisingly steady. Shang Mo is. He poured 2 glasses of water from a carafe, his movements efficient. The novel, The Cold CEO's Substitute Darling, positioned Shang Jiang a convenient stand-in for the reclusive, true heir, Shang Mo as the romantic prize. My character's function is to create narrative tension, be dangled in front of the female rivals, and ultimately be sidelined so the real power can remain undisturbed. He said it like he was reciting a quarterly report. The Corporate Narrative Adjustment Bureau is the Shang family's internal department for managing these fictional incursions into reality. Managing. She swallowed. By eliminating variables. He finally met her eyes, his gaze unflinching. Usually, yes. Transmigrators, system holders, conscious plot deviants, they create unpredictable noise. Noise disrupts business. The Bureau's mandate is to either reintegrate them into the plot or remove them, quietly. And you? What's your function in the Bureau? A ghost of a smile touched his lips, devoid of humor. Field agent. My assignment was to observe the Lin family disturbance, your character's psychological break, and ensure it didn't affect the merger between Shangcorp and Lin's struggling tech division. I was to observe, report, and if necessary, guide the narrative back on track. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Then you woke up. And you didn't have a breakdown. You had a breakout. He brought up a file on a transparent tablet screen, sliding it across to her. It was a log. Subject, Lin Xingyue, post-transmigration event, gala confrontation, not in playbook. Deviant strategy, aesthetic assault. Public impact, high. Narrative corruption, low level. Rainy night encounter, staged, then escalated to genuine peril. Deviant strategy, environmental manipulation. Note, subject possesses unforeseen logistical creativity. Cafe humiliation, rival's play subverted. Deviant strategy, absurdist counter-narrative. Public sentiment shifted from pity to intrigue. Sidewalk incident, genuine threat emerged. Subject's reaction, frozen compliance, consistent with original profile. My reaction, deviation from observer protocol. Masquerade, subject initiated contact using meta-knowledge. Demonstrated strategic intelligence and direct acknowledgement of narrative framework. He had been logging her every move. Rating her. You see, he said, you're not just a variable. You're a pattern. A predictable pattern of unpredictability. You're playing a game, but you're the only one who knows your win condition. That makes you valuable to me. My win condition is to go home, she said, the truth slipping out in her awe at his cold, meticulous dissection of her. He nodded slowly, as if she'd confirmed a theory. A retrieval mission. And to accomplish it, you need to complete iconic scenes with me. It wasn't a question. The system, traitorously, chose that moment to chime. Scene forecast, iconic scene number 6, the contractual agreement, core action, host and target must enter into a formal, written contract for a fake romantic relationship. Key elements: written document, mutual agreement, stipulation of false affection for public consumption. Authenticity threshold, 75%. Xingyue almost laughed. The system was either brilliantly ironic or horrifically tone-deaf. She looked from the forecast hovering in her vision to the real-world spy leaning across from her. The next scene, she said, her voice dry. It's a fake dating contract. Shang Jiang didn't even blink. He turned to a nearby printer, which hummed to life. The Bureau's primary directive is to preserve the stability of this reality's core narrative threads. Shang Yimou believes your deviation is a threat to stability. I am proposing that it is, in fact, a stabilizing force. You need to complete scenes to leave. I need a plausible, public reason for my continued, close interaction with a deviant to satisfy the Bureau and shield you from my brother's more permanent solutions. He took the freshly printed pages, slid them to her, and placed a pen on top. Therefore, we formalize the alliance. A contractual fake relationship. It serves your system's requirements, provides cover for my investigation, and gives us both breathing room. Xingyue picked up the document. It was chillingly professional. Contractual agreement for the public performance of a romantic association parties, Shang Jiang, Party A, and Lin Xingyue, Party B. It outlined terms, public appearances, minimum required interactions per week, media response protocols, confidentiality clauses. It was a business merger in the guise of a romance. You've had this drafted, she said, stunned. Since the cafe incident. I believed a partnership might become strategically necessary. She read on, then snorted. The tension broke for a second. Clause 4, 7, Party B shall not, under any circumstances, refer to Party A as Pookie, Snookums, or any other diminutive that may reduce perceived operational authority in public settings. Professionalism is key to credibility, he said, deadpan. A spark of her old defiance returned. She picked up the pen. I want addendums. He raised an eyebrow. Negotiate. Addendum 1, Party A shall provide a weekly dessert stipend, redeemable at any patisserie in Jinhu, no questions asked. Agreed. Addendum 2, Party B retains the right to use Party A as a live model for artistic figure drawing, with appropriate discretion and prior scheduling. A longer pause. A faint, almost imperceptible flush touched the tips of his ears. Agreed. Addendum 3, she said, her voice softening. This is a partnership. You stop logging me as a subject and start treating me as a co-agent. We share intel. About the Bureau, about the plot, about anything that threatens either of us. He looked at her then, his gaze searching her face not for data points, but for sincerity. The mask of the field agent slipped, just for a moment, revealing the man underneath, weary of his role. That is the most dangerous clause of all, he said quietly. It's the only one that makes this more than just another scene in someone else's script, she countered. He held her gaze for a long beat, then gave a single, sharp nod. Agreed. She signed her name with a flourish. He signed his script bold and decisive. Ding. Ding. Iconic scene number 6, the contractual agreement completed. Authenticity rating, 89%, legally binding document with mutually beneficial terms. Reward, 24-hour lifespan extension. Mystery gift package unlocked, plot armor, 1 use. Warning, linguist's lens depleting. 1 hour remaining. Current lifespan, 144 hours. The system's approval was secondary. The real shift was in the room. The dynamic had irrevocably changed. They were no longer investigator and anomaly. They were co-conspirators. Shang Jiang, as she now thought of him, stood, rolling the tension from his shoulders. First order of shared intel, he said. Lin Xinrui is not a transmigrator. She is, however, being fed information. By who? We're not sure. A rival corporation, perhaps. Or a rogue element within the Bureau itself. She knows the original plot beats. She's trying to enforce them. Your survival is her primary failure. He tapped the flowchart wall. Your accident in the original plot, the car crash. It wasn't an accident in the draft we have on file. It was a deliberate elimination, orchestrated to finalize Lin Xinrui's inheritance and clear the path for the merger. The air left Xingyue's lungs. The page she'd seen wasn't just a tragic ending, it was a murder plot. Your second piece of intel, Jiang continued, his voice grim. My brother's order stands. The Bureau will be evaluating your stabilization. Our contract gives us time. But we need to be proactive. We need to find out who is backing Xinrui, and we need to dismantle her plot before she or the Bureau decides a more direct method is needed. He handed her a secure, encrypted phone. For direct communication. Memorize the number and destroy this one. He gestured to her cheap phone. From now on, we're a team. You handle the social, creative, unpredictable fronts. I'll handle the surveillance, logistics, and corporate warfare. As she took the phone, the weight of it and the partnership settled on her. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach. But it was now mixed with something else, a fierce, determined solidarity. She wasn't alone anymore. So, she said, pocketing the new phone, a real smile touching her lips for the first time that night. When's our first fake date? I hear there's a new soufflé place with a 12-month waiting list. I'd like to test Clause 4, one of that dessert stipend. For the first time, Shang Zhang's smile reached his eyes. It was small, sharp, and full of a shared, dangerous promise. Tomorrow, he said. Be ready. We're not just going on a date. We're going to send a message. As she left the command center, the linguist's lens flickered and died, it's 12 hours up. But she didn't need it to understand the new language she and Jiang were speaking. It was the language of survival, written in contract ink and sealed with a mutual threat. The game had changed. They were no longer pieces on the board. They were rewriting the rules. And their first move was a fake romance that felt, in that moment, like the most real thing in Jinhu City. The morning after signing their fate into a legal document, Lin Xingyue stared at the closet in her room at the Lin mansion. The contents pastels, frills, subdued neutrals spoke of the original Xingyue's desire to fade into the background. They wouldn't do. Not today. Today was the first day of the contract. The first fake date. A message, Jiang had said. She bypassed the delicate silks and chose instead a pair of tailored, high-waisted black trousers she'd never dared wear and a simple but sharply cut ivory silk blouse. She left her hair down, but used a minimalist silver barrette to pull one side back, revealing the rose birthmark. No more hiding. If she was going to be a stabilizing variable, she would look the part. The encrypted phone buzzed as she was applying a bold, red lipstick Nurse Wong's shade, a talisman now. Jiang, car arriving in 10. Destination, Lintech R&D Division. Your father's board meeting starts at 11. We're the surprise agenda item. Her stomach flipped. Not a soufflé date. A corporate ambush. Of course. She texted back, fingers steady. Xingyue, what's the play? Jiang, follow my lead. Your role, confident, entitled heiress. You've secured Shang investment through personal alliance. You're there to claim your seat at the table. Remember, you're not asking. You're informing. A confident, entitled heiress. She could do that. It was just another performance. The most important one yet. The car that arrived was not Zhang's usual SUV. It was a sleek, silver luxury sedan, all polished menace. Jiang emerged, looking every inch the ruthless scion in a charcoal gray suit that seemed to absorb the light. His eyes swept over her, a quick, approving assessment. The clothes suit the narrative. Good. Where's the armor? She asked lightly as the driver held the door. A different kind of battlefield today, he replied, sliding in beside her. The weapons are shares, voting rights, and perception. He handed her a tablet. This is a dummy portfolio. It shows you as the majority stakeholder of a shell company that has just made a significant, friendly investment in Lin Tech. Backed by Shang Capital. Your father will see it as a lifeline. The board will see it as a power shift. She scanned the documents, the legalese a blur, but the numbers were impressively large. And what do you see it as? The first move in boxing Xinrui and her backer out of the inheritance game. If you control a voting bloc, her attempts to push you towards your scripted fate become financially unwise. The Bureau prefers clean, economic solutions over messy ones. The Lintech building was a glass and steel monument to her father's fading ambitions. As they strode through the lobby, a united front, employees gaped. Whispers trailed them like a wake. Is that the older sister? With Shang Jiang? I heard she was unstable, Jiang leaned close, his voice a whisper at her ear. They're looking at the story we're telling. Make them believe it. The boardroom door swung open. Her father, Lin Feng, was mid-sentence, his face florid with frustration. Lin Xinrui sat to his right, the picture of supportive daughterhood. The other board members, a collection of weary old men and sharp-eyed opportunists, fell silent. Father, Xingyue said, her voice ringing clear in the stunned quiet. I apologize for the interruption. Shang Jiang and I have a proposal that I believe requires the board's immediate attention. Lin Feng's eyes bulged. Xingyue. This is highly irregular. You can't just I can, she interrupted, channeling every CEO she'd ever seen in movies. She placed the tablet on the table, the figures glowing. Through the Xingyue Holdings Group, with the full backing of Shangcorp Ventures, I am prepared to inject capital to cover the Q3 shortfall and fund the next phase of the Neuralink project. My terms are on screen. The room erupted. Xinrui's face was a masterpiece of suppressed fury, her knuckles white on the table. This is outrageous, her father spluttered. It's business, Jiang said, speaking for the first time. His voice was quiet, but it sliced through the noise. Miss Lin's proposal is sound. It stabilizes Lintech, protects shareholder value, and aligns with Shangcorp's strategic interests. He didn't look at Lin Feng. He looked at the board members, one by one. A vote of confidence in new leadership is often the most profitable move. It was a threat wrapped in an investment brochure. The meeting dissolved into chaos, but the outcome was preordained. Money and fear talked. A provisional agreement was struck. Xingyue was granted a non-executive board seat, with Jiang as her advisor. It was a beachhead. As they left the building, the facade of United Power still firmly in place, Xingyue felt exhilarated and hollow. She'd played her part perfectly. But it was just another scene, on a bigger stage. Back in the car, Jiang let out a long, slow breath, the first sign of tension she'd seen in him all day. Well done. You sold it. We sold it, she corrected, slumping against the leather seat. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaky. The next scene is cued, he said, not looking at her. His tone was carefully neutral. She pulled up the system forecast. Scene forecast, iconic scene number 7, the sickbed confession, core action. Host must tend to a mildly ill target, leading to a moment of vulnerable, nonverbal intimacy, e.g., forehead touch, prolonged eye contact. Key elements, domestic setting, caregiving, unguarded moment. Authenticity threshold, 80% note, illness cannot be life-threatening, focus on soft vulnerability. Xingyue blinked. A sickbed scene? How are we supposed to stage that? Do you have a vial of low-grade fever syrup in your spy kit? A faint smile touched his lips. Even the Bureau can't control microbiology. But we can control the environment. He paused. My apartment. Tonight. I'll ensure I'm running a slight temperature. The rest will be on you. The clinical planning of it should have felt absurd. Instead, it felt intensely, awkwardly intimate. That evening, she arrived at his apartment with a bag containing supplies from a 24-hour pharmacy, fever reducers, a thermometer, bone broth from a fancy deli. He answered the door dressed in dark sweatpants and a simple gray t-shirt, his hair slightly damp. He did look paler than usual, his eyes a little too bright. Did you actually make yourself sick? She asked, alarmed. A mild immunosuppressant from the Bureau's medical division. Simulates flu-like symptoms for 12 hours. Harmless. He stepped back to let her in, swaying just a little. It was a masterful performance, or perhaps the drug was just that good. The sterile luxury of his apartment felt different at night, softer. He settled on the vast, gray sofa, a blanket already waiting. Xingyue moved through the kitchen, heating the broth, her movements feeling both domestic and surreal. This was the man who wore body armor, who ran corporate black ops, now pretending to have the flu for her to complete a romantic trope. She brought him a mug of broth. His fingers brushed hers as he took it, and they were warm. Too warm. Thank you, he murmured, his voice slightly rough. He took a sip, his eyes closing for a second. In the dim light, with his defenses physically lowered, he looked younger. Tired. The weight of his double life agent, brother's weapon seemed to press visibly on him. The system didn't ding. Caregiving wasn't enough. It needed the vulnerable moment. He set the mug down and leaned his head back against the cushion, a genuine shiver running through him. The drug's more effective than I anticipated, he admitted through slightly clenched teeth. Without overthinking it, Xingyue sat on the edge of the sofa near him. She reached out and pressed the back of her hand to his forehead. His skin was hot and smooth. His eyes flew open, gray and startled, locking onto hers. The air vanished from the room. This wasn't in the script. The touch was too real, too simple. He didn't pull away. He just watched her, his breath hitching slightly. The analytical gaze was gone, replaced by something raw and unguarded. She saw the faint scar along his hairline, the shadows of exhaustion under his eyes, the slight pulse at his temple. Her own heart was pounding. She wasn't Lin Xingyue the Transmigrator or the Heiress. She was just a woman, touching a man who was suddenly, devastatingly real. Time stretched. Her hand remained. His eyes held hers, a silent, profound communication passing between them, an acknowledgement of the absurdity, the danger, and the undeniable, fragile connection humming in the space between their skin. Ding. Ding. Iconic scene number 7, the sickbed confession, completed. Authenticity rating, 96%, genuine caregiving interaction, high-intensity nonverbal intimacy detected. Reward, 24-hour lifespan extension. System notice, upgrading. New function unlocked, regression mode. Current lifespan, 168 hours. The ding broke the spell. She pulled her hand back as if burned. He cleared his throat, looking away, the mask of control slipping back into place, but slower this time. Regression mode, she asked, her voice unsteady, focusing on the system to ground herself. Before he could speculate, the system interface in her vision glitched violently. Instead of text, a series of fast, chaotic images flashed, a car skidding in the rain. Shang Zhang's face, etched with a grief she'd never seen. Herself, in a hospital bed, machines beeping. Shang Mo, holding a single, glowing data chip. The same car crash, from a different angle. A contract, burning. Then, words scrawled like a desperate message, warning, narrative corruption critical. Regression protocol initiated. Host must relive key moment to solidify timeline. Prepare for regression, 24 hours. The images vanished. A new, ominous countdown appeared in her vision, superimposed over her lifespan clock, 23 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. Jiang, she whispered, terror flooding back. The system, it's showing me things. Bad things. It says regression. I have to relive something. He was instantly alert, the simulated sickness forgotten. What did you see? She described the flashes. When she mentioned the data chip in Shang Mo's hand, his face went taut. That's a bureau extraction device. For downloading consciousness from resolved variables. His voice was grim. The car crash. It's the nexus. The original point of deletion. The system isn't just making you play scenes anymore, Xingyue. It's trying to repair the timeline by forcing you back to the moment it broke. You mean it's going to try to kill me? For real this time? Not kill you. Correct you. Make the story go the way it was originally written. He stood up, pacing, all trace of vulnerability gone. We have 24 hours. We need to understand what relive means. Is it mental? Physical? We need to find that data chip. If MO has a backup of the original plot's outcome, that's our only map. He stopped pacing and looked at her, his expression fierce. The contract just got real. This isn't about blending in anymore. This is about fighting the narrative itself. And we're not just partners. He took a step toward her, the space between them crackling with a new, desperate energy. We're the only ones who know the story is trying to rewrite itself. That makes us the counter-narrative. The cozy sickbed scene was a distant memory. They stood now in the eye of a coming storm, the system that had been her lifeline now morphing into her executioner. The fake relationship, the corporate plays, the family drama, it all shrunk to insignificance next to this. Xingyue met his gaze, her fear hardening into a cold, clear resolve. Then we rewrite it first. Where do we start? He grabbed his secure laptop. We start by hacking the Bureau's archives. We need that original crash report. Every detail. If you have to relive it, we're going to change the ending. As he typed furiously, Xingyue looked at the regression countdown. 23 hours 58 minutes and 17 seconds. They weren't just playing scenes anymore. They were at war with the story of their own lives. And the next chapter was one the system desperately wanted back. The regression protocol countdown glowed in the corner of Lin Xingyue's vision, a pulsing, crimson scar over her reality. 22 hours 14 minutes and 8 seconds. It didn't just mark time, it marked a deadline for her existence. The cozy vulnerability of the sickbed scene was ashes. Now, there was only the cold, sharp clarity of a mission. Reliving the crash isn't an option, Jiang stated, his voice stripped of all pretense. He was at his command center desk, 3 holographic screens projecting data streams. The mild fever from the immunosuppressant was gone, burned away by adrenaline. If the system forces a full regression to that nexus point, it may overwrite your current consciousness with the original Lin Xingyu as the one who was meant to die. You'd cease to be. Permanently. Xingyue stood before the massive flowchart, her eyes tracing the red string from her photo to a blurred image of a sedan, then to a file labeled Operation, Silent Reset. So we don't let it force anything. We turn the regression into a reconnaissance mission. We learn why the crash happened. Who specifically ordered it? If it was Xinrue, her backer, or the Bureau itself. Jiang nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. That's the play. To do that, we need 2 things. First, the Bureau's internal case file on the incident, which is locked behind my brother's personal encryption. Second, we need to complete your next iconic scene to keep your vitality stable and maintain system access. The regression might be a hostile takeover attempt, but the scene completion function is still our tool. He swiped a screen toward her. The forecast was already there. Scene forecast, iconic scene number 8. The boardroom defense, core action. Host must publicly and successfully defend target's business interests or character against a verbal attack in a formal corporate setting. Key elements: public forum, verbal aggression from a rival, host's persuasive defense, target's witnessed appreciation. Authenticity threshold, 80%. The universe has a sick sense of irony, Xingyue muttered. Defend you? From what? From this, Jiang said, pulling up a news alert. The financial channel scrolled a headline, Shangcorp Air's reckless personal entanglements raise governance concerns. The article, thinly sourced but dripping with venom, suggested Jiang's sudden and irrational investment in Lin Tech, and his very public dalliance with its troubled heiress, showed poor judgment, questioning his fitness to oversee the family's new AI ethics division. Planted by my brother, Jiang said coldly. A 2-pronged attack. Undermine me professionally, and isolate you by making you a liability. There's an emergency shareholder call for the AI ethics board in 2 hours. My presence is required. Yours is not, unless you have a relevant stake. Xingyue understood immediately. The Lintech board seat. It gives me standing to attend as an interested party in the Shangcorp Lintech partnership. Exactly. Will you be my shield, Lin Xingyue? The question was formal, but his gaze was intense. This wasn't just a scene requirement. This was the first real test of their alliance in the public, corporate arena. What's the attack vector? She asked, her mind shifting into design mode. A defense wasn't just about words, it was about perception, narrative. The lead critic will be Dr. Heiress Thorne, a renowned AI ethicist from Oxford my brother recently installed on the board. He's brilliant, morally rigid, and has a deep disdain for theater over substance. He will argue that my judgment is clouded by personal sentiment, making me a risk for a division dealing with ethical boundaries. Xingyue's lips curved. Then we don't defend the sentiment. We reframe the narrative. We make our theater the substance. For the next 90 minutes, she worked not with spreadsheets, but with presentation software. She accessed the public specs for Lintech's Neuralink project, a brain-computer interface for medical rehabilitation. She cross-referenced it with the Shangcorp AI Ethics Division's stated principles, human-centric design and empathetic implementation. She didn't prepare a speech. She prepared a story. 2 hours later, they entered the virtual boardroom, a cutting-edge holographic suite where attendees appeared as lifelike avatars around a digital table. Dr. Thorne, a man with a stern, lined face and cold eyes, wasted no time. And it is this very pattern of impulsive, emotionally driven decision-making that concerns this board, he concluded, his avatar gesturing with academic precision toward Jiang. The Lintech investment, following a series of public spectacles, suggests a prioritization of personal narrative over fiduciary duty. How can we trust your judgment on the ethics of artificial consciousness when you seem swayed by the most biologically basic of human dramas? The other avatars, a mix of old Shang family retainers and new independent directors, rippled with unease. Jiang, a model of calm, opened his mouth to respond, but Xingyue spoke first. Her avatar, she'd chosen a simple, professional form, but her voice was clear and carried across the digital space. Dr. Thorne, if I may? As the new director of creative synergy for the Lintech Corp partnership, I believe you've misunderstood the narrative. All digital eyes turned to her. Thorne looked annoyed. Creative synergy? Is that a real title? It is now, she said smoothly. And my first project is to bridge the gap you just identified. You see the public interactions between Mr. Shang and myself as drama. I see them as live, iterative field research. She shared her screen to the central holodisplay. On it was not a financial chart, but a sleek, animated infographic she'd built. It mapped the timeline of her public spectacles, the gala, the cafe, the masquerade, and drew connecting lines to core AI ethics principles. The gala confrontation, she began, a dot lighting up. A study in human response to social rupture and nonverbal communication cues, direct data for improving human-AI interaction protocols in high-stakes environments. The cafe incident, another dot flared, an impromptu experiment in de-escalation through absurdity and social reframing highly relevant for conflict resolution algorithms. The masquerade. She looked directly at Zhang's avatar, her tone softening just enough. An exploration of identity, anonymity, and authentic connection in a digitally mediated world, the core challenge of ethical virtual consciousness. She zoomed out, the graphic a constellation of connected points. Mr. Shang's investment in Lintech isn't despite these events, Doctor. It's because of them. The Neuralink project needs an ethical framework that understands human emotion, social nuance, and the messy, unpredictable reality of human experience. You can't program empathy from an ivory tower. You have to engage with the theater, as you call it. Because life is theater. And our partnership is building the first AI director smart enough to understand the script and the improv. The boardroom was silent, but the quality of the silence had changed. The unease had shifted to intrigue. Doctor. Thorne stared at the graphic, his stern face unreadable. A fanciful reinterpretation of tabloid fodder, he finally said, but the bite was gone from his voice. It was a professional critique, not a dismissal. All innovation seems fanciful until it works, Jiang said, seizing the moment. His voice held a note of genuine warmth as he looked at Xingyue's avatar. Miss Lin's unique perspective is exactly the disruptive synergy our ethics division requires. I stand by my decisions, and by our partnership. The chairman, an elderly Shan uncle, cleared his throat. The creative analysis is unorthodox, but the underlying logic is sound. We are in the business of understanding humanity, after all. Motion to table the governance concern? The motion passed. The attack was neutralized. As the avatars began to wink out, Zhang's gaze held hers across the digital void. His expression was one of profound, unvarnished respect. No calculation, no analysis. Just acknowledgement. Ding. Ding. Iconic scene number 8, the boardroom defense, completed. Authenticity rating, 94%, successful defense utilizing host's unique skills, high perceived authenticity from audience. Reward, 24-hour lifespan extension. Mystery gift unlocked, key memory shard. Current lifespan, 192 hours. The key memory shard unfolded in her mind not as a page, but as a sensory flash, the smell of rain and gasoline. The crumpled hood of a silver sedan. A hand reaching through shattered glass not to help her, but to retrieve a small, black data drive from the car's dashboard. The hand wore a signet ring she recognized, the Shang family crest, but with a minor alteration, a tiny crack through the central jade. Shang Mo's ring. The memory ended. She gasped, her real body swaying in the holographic suite. Jiang was at her side in an instant, his hand on her elbow, steadying her. What is it? The crash, she breathed. It wasn't just an elimination. Someone retrieved data from the car after. Your brother was there. He took something. A black data drive. Zhang's face went pale. The car's black box. And if he was there, then the accident was bureau-sanctioned. An extraction mission gone wrong, or made to look wrong. His jaw tightened. The data on that drive wouldn't just be telemetrics. If the original Xingyue was a system host or a deviant like you, it could contain fragments of her consciousness, or system code. The regression countdown pulsed, 18 hours 32 minutes and 11 seconds. The puzzle pieces snapped together with terrifying clarity. The system wanted to regress her to the crash not just to correct the story, but to recover the data. To complete the extraction the original crash had interrupted. "He's not trying to kill me," Xingyue whispered, horror dawning. "He's trying to finish the download. The regression, it's a forced upload." Zhang's grip on her arm tightened. "Then we don't just change the ending," he said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "We steal the data first. We find that drive." The boardroom defense was over. They had won the scene, bought more time, and gained a crucial clue. But the victory was hollow. They now knew the true horror of the countdown. They weren't just fighting for her life. They were fighting for her very soul against a brother who saw it as a piece of salvageable code. The corporate intrigue, the fake romance, it all melted away, revealing the brutal, binary truth beneath. The next scene wouldn't be about defense or romance. It would be a heist. And the target was the memory of her own death. The memory shard had changed everything. The crash wasn't an end, it was a corrupted data transfer. The regression protocol wasn't a correction, it was a system-level command to complete download. Countdown, 16 hours 5 minutes and 47 seconds. Zhang's command center was a war room. Blueprints of the Shang Corporation's central server annex known as the Vault glowed on the main screen. "The physical drive from your car would be considered contaminated, unstable evidence," Jiang explained, pointing to a sub-basement level. Mo wouldn't risk connecting it to the main network. He'd keep it in a Faraday-shielded evidence locker in the cold archives. Access requires his biometrics and a one-time code from his personal device. Xingyue studied the schematics, her designer's mind parsing the architecture. "So we need his fingerprint, his retina, and his phone." Simple. Her voice was dry, the fear metabolized into a sharp, clear focus. "The boardroom defense scene bought us goodwill but also scrutiny," Jiang said, pulling up security logs. "Mo has doubled the physical patrols around the annex. He knows we're moving. Our window is the annual Shang Family Philanthropy Summit tonight at the estate. Mo, as the true heir, must make a public appearance. It's a 3-hour event. That's our gap." "And the next iconic scene?" Xingyue asked, pulling up the forecast. Scene forecast, iconic scene number 9, the trapped elevator, core action. Host and target must be trapped together in a confined space, e.g., elevator, storage room, leading to a moment of shared vulnerability and a first kiss. Key elements: forced proximity, atmosphere of tense intimacy, first kiss. Authenticity threshold, 90% warning, confinement must feel genuinely inescapable for a duration. She stared at the text. A first kiss. In the middle of a heist. With a countdown to her potential digital oblivion ticking away. The absurdity was cosmic. Jiang followed her gaze. His expression was unreadable. The vault's main service elevator is notoriously temperamental. A scheduled malfunction can be arranged. It would provide cover for our presence in the secure wing and satisfy the scene parameters. So we get trapped in an elevator on purpose, kiss for the system, then go steal the evidence of my own murder? She let out a shaky laugh. "This is the most deranged date in history." "Our partnership was never conventional," he replied, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. He reached into a drawer and pulled out 2 sleek, black devices. Earpieces with subvocal mics. "We maintain contact. I also need you to wear this." It was a delicate silver necklace with a teardrop pendant. "It's a passive scanner. Once we're in the cold archives, it will ping if it detects the unique electromagnetic signature of a damaged storage drive. It will narrow the search." She took the necklace, its metal cool against her skin. The intimacy of the gesture, amidst the clinical planning, sent a strange flutter through her chest. The plan was a fragile house of cards. Phase 1, infiltrate the Shang estate during the summit. Phase 2, access the secure server annex via the maintenance tunnels Jiang knew from childhood. Phase 3, trigger the elevator malfunction, get trapped, complete the scene. Phase 4, use the distraction to bypass the final biometric lock using a replicated print and retina scan Jiang had acquired. Phase 5, locate and extract the drive. Phase 6, exfiltrate before Mo's return. 1,000 things could go wrong. The summit was a sea of tuxedos and gowns, a glittering facade over the rod of family secrets. Xingyue wore a dress of matte black, elegant and unobtrusive. Jiang, at her side, was a statue of calm authority. They circulated, made polite conversation, all while tracking Shang Mo's movements on discrete contact lenses that fed them a surveillance feed. Target is engaged with the mayor. He's anchored for the next 20 minutes, Jiang murmured, his lips barely moving. Now, Xingyue whispered back. They slipped away through a servant's entrance, into the labyrinthine underbelly of the estate. The air grew cold and smelled of dust and ozone. Jiang moved with sure, silent steps, bypassing motion sensors with a handheld scrambler. They reached the unmarked door to the server annex. Jiang placed his palm on a scanner. A light flickered from red to green. My access still works. He hasn't purged me yet. Inside, the atmosphere was hushed, the only sound the faint hum of servers. They moved past glowing racks of equipment toward the central elevator. Jiang tapped a sequence into a wall panel. Elevator malfunction in 3, 2, 1. A soft clunk echoed, and the elevator lights died. Showtime, he said, his voice tight. He pried the doors open manually. The elevator car was stalled between floors, a dark, metal box. They slipped inside. The doors shut behind them, plunging them into near-total darkness, save for the soft, green glow of the emergency call button. It was profoundly quiet, the outside world sealed away. Their breathing seemed loud. The system's scene parameters settled around them like a physical weight. Forced proximity. Tense intimacy. Your heart is racing, Jiang observed quietly. He was close, his shoulder brushing hers in the confined space. Yours isn't, she countered, hearing the steady, slow rhythm of his pulse through the intimate quiet. I've been in tighter spots. But his voice was low, a vibration in the dark. With a mandate to kiss your co-conspirator? That is a first. The air grew thick. The pretense, the mission, the looming regression, it all fell away in the dark box. Here, they were just Jiang and Xingyue, two people caught in a story too big for them. Why are you doing this? She asked, the question escaping her. Really? You could have reported me as a total deviant. Let the Bureau resolve me. Your life would be simpler. He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When I first read your file, he began, his voice barely a whisper, I saw a statistic. A problem to be managed. Then I saw you at the gala, turning your vulnerability into a weapon. I saw you covered in green slime, laughing. You looked at the script they gave you and you doodled in the margins. You created something new. He shifted, his face a pale blur in the gloom. I've spent my life following protocols, maintaining narratives. You're the first real, unpredictable, beautiful thing I've encountered in this manufactured world. I can't let them delete you. Her breath caught. The word beautiful hung between them, not about her face, but about her chaos. The system didn't need a cue. The authenticity was at 100%. He moved, or she did. In the dark, she felt his hand cup her jaw, his thumb brushing the rose birthmark. His touch was not that of a field agent or a CEO. It was tentative, real. The kiss wasn't dramatic. It was a question in the dark. A soft meeting of lips, a shared breath. It was warmth and certainty and a terrifying promise. It tasted of resolution and rebellion. For a few heartbeats, the countdown stopped. The vault disappeared. There was only the connection, fragile and electric. Ding. The chime in her mind was gentle, almost mournful. Ding. Iconic scene number 9, the trapped elevator, completed. Authenticity rating, 98%. Reward, 24-hour lifespan extension. Final scene unlocked, iconic scene number 10, the final choice. Current lifespan, 216 hours. Regression countdown, 14 hours 22 minutes and 15 seconds. The light in the elevator flickered back on. The door slid open with a soft ping. The moment shattered. Jiang pulled back, his eyes searching hers, a storm of conflict in their gray depths. The vulnerability was gone, sealed behind a wall of urgent purpose. The clock's running. The security loop is on a 90-second reset. Now. They moved. The kiss, a universe of meaning, was now a battery charge, a boost. They were a synchronized team. Jiang used a replicated silicone print and a contact lens projector to fool the final lock to the cold archives. The heavy door hissed open, revealing a room of climate-controlled drawers. Xingyue's pendant grew warm against her skin, pulsing faintly. She followed the signal, her heart hammering anew. It led to a drawer marked L7/contaminated/unsorted. Jiang pulled it open. Inside, among other odds and ends and sealed bags, was a small, blackened, cracked data drive. The label read, Vehicle, Silver Sedan, Lin Xingyue, Black Box Corrupted. He reached for it just as a calm, amplified voice filled the room. I commend your initiative, little brother. But the game is over. Zhang Yimou stood in the doorway, flanked by 4 bureau security officers in tactical gear. He wasn't in his summit tuxedo. He wore a simple, black uniform. In his hand was a device that glowed with the same eerie light as the data drive. You didn't think I'd leave the key to my most valuable specimen unguarded, did you? Mo said, his porcelain mask calm more terrifying than any anger. The pendant signal was a welcome beacon. And a regression countdown, a perfect pressure cooker to force you to come to me. Jiang stepped in front of Xingyue, his body shielding hers. Mo, don't. This isn't a specimen. This is a person. Is she? Mo tilted his head, his gaze dissecting Xingyue. She's a narrative parasite attached to a character shell. The original consciousness is already fragmented on that drive. My protocol will simply complete the transfer, stabilize the data, and restore the timeline. The Lin family merger will proceed. You will be reassigned. Order will be restored. He raised the glowing device a field extractor. The regression will happen here and now. Say goodbye to your beautiful variable, Jiang. Her story ends as it was always meant to. The officers raised their weapons. The extractor hummed to life. The regression countdown in Xingyue's vision surged, the numbers blurring. 00:00:05. Jiang looked back at her, his eyes full of a fierce, desperate love that needed no words. He had one hand behind his back, fingers moving in a rapid, coded signal against her arm. Time. Pause. Now. He had remembered her one-time skill. The one she'd never used. As Zhang Mo's finger descended on the extractor's trigger, as the countdown hit 1 second, Lin Xingyue reached into the heart of the system and screamed. Pause. The world didn't just freeze. It shattered. A silent, blinding pulse of white light erupted from her, from the drive, from Mo's device, a feedback loop of temporal energy. The officers, Mo, Jiang, everything was caught in a crystalline stasis. But this was no clean 30-second freeze. This was a violent rupture. The one-time time pause skill, activated at the exact moment of forced regression, collided with the system's core protocol. Error. Error. Paradox detected. The pristine archive room fractured like glass. The world around them didn't just stop, it began to rewind and fast forward in jagged, terrifying clips. She saw the car crash happen in reverse. She saw herself signing the contract with Jiang. She saw the green smoothie fly back into its glass. She saw Zhang Yimou as a young boy, receiving his first briefing on narrative control. And in the center of the maelstrom, the black data drive glowed like a dying star, its cracked shell peeling away to reveal not digital data, but a faint, shimmering thread, a golden strand of pure, raw narrative potential, severed and trapped. The system's final announcement echoed, broken and distorted, iconic. Scenes. Complete. Regression. Protocol. Overridden by. Paradox. Final. Choice. Imminent. Host must choose the thread. The frozen world held its breath. The stolen drive hovered between her and Zhang Yimou. Jiang was a statue of protective fury. The 10th and final scene was here. Not a kiss, not a defense. A choice. And as the temporal storm raged around her, Lin Xingyue realized the ultimate truth. The story wasn't about surviving scenes. It was about deciding which story to tell. She looked at the golden thread, the original, tragic plot. She looked at Jiang, the man who chose her chaos over his order. She looked at the shattered world. The system waited. Choose. The world was a shattered kaleidoscope of moments. The taste of Jiang's kiss in the dark elevator. The cold dread of the regression countdown. The sterile glare of the archive lights on Zhang Mo's triumphant face. All of it hung frozen, fractured, vibrating with the energy of the paradox she had created. Before her, the corrupted black drive had disintegrated, leaving only that single, shimmering golden thread, the original, tragic plotline of the cold CEO's substitute darling, the pre-programmed destiny of Lin Xingyue, to be a beautiful, forgotten sacrifice. To her left, a different thread began to coalesce from the swirling temporal energy. It was silver and blue, vibrant and chaotic, woven from moments that should never have been, a curtain-turned gown, a chocolate ankle rebellion, a whispered confession under a masquerade moon, a kiss in a trapped elevator. Her story. The deviant narrative. The system's voice, stripped of all artificial chirpiness, echoed with a profound, weary finality. Host. The narrative integrity of this world has been compromised by your sustained deviations. A paradox of this magnitude cannot be sustained. One thread must be chosen to become the new foundational reality. The golden thread restores order, resets all anomalies, ensures continuity. The silver thread, an uncharted narrative. Stability cannot be guaranteed. Survival cannot be guaranteed. Choose. It wasn't about going home. The portal was gone. That naive win condition had burned away in the temporal blast. This was a deeper choice, which reality would be. Choose the gold, and she would cease to be Lin Xingyue, the transmigrator. She'd become the ghost again, her brief, glorious rebellion erased from history. Jiang would forget her. He'd go back to being the Bureau's perfect field agent. Shimurui would win. Order, cold and sterile, would reign. Choose the silver, and she embraced the chaos. She claimed this broken world as her own. She chose the man frozen in the act of shielding her, the one who saw beauty in her mess. She chose the unpredictable future, the unwritten story. Her eyes found Jiang, trapped in time. His face was a snapshot of ferocious love and unwavering resolve. He hadn't hesitated. He'd chosen her side, knowing it could mean his ruin. I'm the first real, unpredictable, beautiful thing I've encountered, he'd said. She looked at the golden thread, promising peace, quiet, an end to struggle. It felt like death. She looked at the silver thread, crackling with uncertainty, pain, potential, and love. It felt like life. Lin Xingyue, the graphic designer from another world, who'd fought for every second with creativity and sheer stubborn will, reached out. Her fingers did not close around the silver thread. Instead, she grabbed both threads. And she began to braid them. A scream of protest erupted from the frozen form of Shang Yamo, a silent ripple in the static. The system blared alarms. Invalid input. Paradox reinitiated. No, Xingyue whispered, her voice the only sound in the fractured universe. Her hands worked with an artist's certainty, weaving gold and silver together. Not a paradox. A synthesis. She wasn't choosing one story over another. She was doing what she'd always done, taking the material she was given and making something new. The tragic past and the rebellious present. The script and the improv. Order and chaos. You wanted a stable narrative, she shouted at the void, at the system, at Shang Mo's frozen horror. I'll give you one. But it won't be yours. It'll be ours. A story where the past isn't erased, it's understood. Where a variable isn't a flaw, it's a feature. With a final, wrenching pull, she completed the braid. The world did not snap back. It reconstituted. The blinding light dissolved. The archive room was whole again, but different. The air was clear, charged with a new potential. Shang Yamo and his officers were on the floor, unconscious, the extractor device dark and dead beside them. The system interface in her vision flickered one last time. Narrative, synthesized. New core protocol established, creative co-authorship. Elimination protocols. Wishing you, an interesting story. The interface dissolved into a shower of harmless pixels that faded away. The weight in her mind, the constant countdowns, the forecasts lifted. She felt terrifyingly, exhilaratingly free. And mortal. A groan came from beside her. Jiang stirred, pushing himself up. His eyes flew open, wild with fear until they landed on her. Xingyue. He scrambled to her, his hands frantically checking her for injury. What happened? The last thing I remember, you told me to pause time, she said, her voice trembling with post-adrenaline fatigue and a soaring joy. So I did. And then I started a new one. He stared at her, comprehension dawning. He looked at the braided, fading glow of energy still wrapped around her fingers, then at his unconscious brother. You didn't choose. You remixed. I'm a designer, she said, a tear finally tracing a path through the dust on her cheek. I don't like being given only two options. He pulled her into his arms, a hug so tight it felt like an anchor in the new reality. What does this mean? He murmured into her hair. It means the Bureau's old rules are gone. The script is blank. We have to write it ourselves. She pulled back to look at him. Together. He cupped her face, his thumb stroking her birthmark. I don't know how to write a story, he admitted, the fearless agent gone, replaced by a man facing a beautiful, terrifying unknown. She smiled, wiping her tears. We'll learn. Chapter by chapter. 6 months later, the Lin family mansion had been sold. The proceeds, after paying off debts, were split. Lin Xinrui, stripped of her narrative backing and facing financial and legal scrutiny from the newly reformed Shang Creative Continuity Department, the Bureau's much nicer, therapy-funded successor, had taken her share and vanished to Europe. She was no longer a villainess, just a sad, ordinary girl who'd lost her stolen crown. Lin Feng and his wife, confronted with the cold ledger of their neglect and the formidable alliance their daughter had built, retired to a quiet seaside town, their influence and cruelty finally spent. The boardroom of the new Shanglin Creative Collaborative was nothing like the old Lintech or Shangcorp. The walls were painted in warm colors. One was a giant whiteboard covered in wild, interconnected ideas. Xingyue stood at the head of the table, not in a suit, but in a bold patterned dress, presenting. So, by integrating the empathetic framework we developed from the Smoothie incident data with the neural interface, she said, pointing to a vibrant graphic, we can create the first true emotion bridge for locked-in syndrome patients. It's not just reading signals. It's about translating feeling into connection. The board, a mix of former Shang ethicists, excited engineers, and even a wary but respectful doctor. Thorne listened intently. Jiang sat to the side, watching her with undisguised pride. After the meeting, as they walked through the sun-drenched collaborative space buzzing with programmers, artists, and psychologists working side by side, Jiang slipped his hand into hers. You were brilliant, he said. We were, she corrected, squeezing his hand. You're the one who secured the FDA liaison. They had a penthouse now, one with a huge studio for her and a secure, soundproofed office for him. Old habits died hard. It was filled with her art, his books, and the shared, quiet comfort of two people who had chosen each other off-script. That night, on their balcony overlooking the reborn Jinhu city, he handed her a small box. Not a ring. A custom-made, solid-state drive, housed in a beautiful glass case. What's this? The first draft, he said, a shy, uncharacteristic smile on his face. Of our story. I've been writing. A memoir. From my perspective. From the gala onward. Touched, she took it. Why? Because we're the co-authors, he said, pulling her close, his chin resting on her head. And every good story needs a record. Especially one this unlikely. She leaned into him, watching the city lights twinkle like a galaxy they'd helped rearrange. The system was gone. The scenes were over. There were no more forecasts, no more countdowns. There was only the quiet, thrilling, unpredictable rhythm of a life they were building, day by day, choice by choice. Not a perfect romance novel, but something better. A true story. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of the universe, a system watched its most successful, most disobedient host, and for the first time, felt something akin to satisfaction. It had been designed to complete stories. It had never considered that the most beautiful completion was a beginning. Post-credits scene, a young intern at the collaborative, rushing with a stack of tablets, tripped over a loose cable and sent the devices flying. She lay on the floor, surrounded by the wreckage, wanting to die of embarrassment. A shadow fell over her. She looked up to see Lin Xingyue, the legendary co-founder, smiling down at her. Oh. Miss Lin. I'm so sorry, I'm such a klutz. Xingyue knelt, picked up a miraculously unbroken tablet, and handed it to her. Her eyes twinkled with a secret, knowing light. Hey, Xingyue said, her voice low and kind. Don't worry about it. You know, some of the best stories start with a little stumble. She helped the flustered intern to her feet, gave her a wink, and walked away, leaving the girl blinking after her, a strange, unexplainable sense of hope blooming in her chest.